Game Pocket Edition, our slim and succinct show for gamers by gamers. I'm Hex.
And I'm Barjo, and Hex, I've got a bit of a bittersweet taste in my mouth this week because I'm happy that we have a Star Trek game, but I'm also sad that we have this Star Trek game.
Debriefing on that movie tie-in mission at the end of the show, but first let's go back to the zombie-filled Mediterranean of Dead Island Riptide. Dead Island Riptide is a sequel to the original Dead Island, this time shipping us off to an all-new infected locale for another tropical holiday knee-deep in the dead.
I like that you can import your character over from the first game with your skill points intact. But even so, you still have to take on an almost endless supply of fetch quests and spamming that F key repeatedly to loot containers.
The graphics have had a slight tweak over the original, but nothing really to write home about. One very welcome update, however, is the respawn mechanic. No more of that trudging forever back to where you carked it. And really, thank goodness, because the movement is still pretty clumsy. You get stuck everywhere.
I think the game's strength is still its weapon customization, where you get to add things like electricity in for an extra kick in the combat. Overall, though, I was disappointed because this felt more like an expansion or DLC than an actual sequel because so much was the same, so I gave it 6 out of 10 rubber chickens.
Yeah, it's still pretty rough around the edges with plenty of bugs and glitches. I do think this is a lot more fun when you play it in co-op rather than a single-player romp. I gave it 6.5.
Next up, Guacamelee, which is on Vita and PS3. Guacamelee is an indie platformer from Drinkbox Studios that boasts a Metroidvania influence. That is, it has evolving combat, puzzles, secrets, and levels designed for back-and-forth exploration. You can switch between parallel worlds on the fly, the land of the living and the land of the dead, allowing for some creative solutions to what seem to be impassable obstacles.
Guacamelee is bursting with style, from the awesome angular animation to the brassy Mexican soundtrack. And I'm glad to say that just as much work has gone into fleshing out the combat system.
It's clever the way they've made some of those punching moves necessary to how you navigate your way through the levels, sometimes punching through to a new area or reaching a platform.
Yeah, there's a nice balance between mastering the combos and using your brain to figure out the trickier enemies' weaknesses. There really is a lot of depth to this, and you'll want to explore every nook and cranny. I gave it 9.
I thought the map system was a bit vague, but I enjoyed this. I gave it 8.5.
Now, from luchadors to rocket launchers and Shootmania Storm. With the lightning-fast pace of classic Twitch shooters like Quake and a scale of maps like Tribes, the focus of this game is the user-made content, maps, tournaments, skins, and rules.
In the default mode, everyone in the game has the same launcher weapon, so there's no weapon switching.
You can fire 4 shots in quick succession before having to wait precious seconds for it to recharge.
Your weapon does change function depending on where you are in the map, such as morphing from a grenade launcher to a sniper-like railgun. It takes a while to get used to that, and it's not explained very well.
Yeah, the game also prevents you from jumping in some areas. Your feet get locked to the ground, which I found really off-putting, and it led to a few deaths.
There are 3 main modes: Royal, which is like Deathmatch, Joust, which is one-on-one dueling, and Elite, a 3-on-3 game which turned out to be the most fun, I thought. And because of all the editing tools in Shootmania, there will soon be a stack of user-made modes, maps, and weapons, and I think that's where we'll see the game shine. I think this game has a lot of potential, so I gave it 7.
I like the constant leaderboards. It keeps competitive spirits high, which is perfect for this sort of game. I think the community is really going to make this shine, so I scored it 7.5 out of 10.
Now Hex, you know I love Guild Wars, and this week I finally got around to checking out their April Fool's joke gone right, Super Adventure Box. In Azura's capital, there's a little man by the name of Moto, which is obviously a Shigeru Miyamoto reference. If you enter his experimental box and feed him a gold coin, you're transported into an old-school retro 3D world. And it just made me warm inside, Hex. The music is incredible and spooky at times. Old-school enemies, bee-dogs, a bee-dog boss, some crazy platforming, especially if you don't use the Cloud Rainbow bridges. It was just such a wonderful ride of nostalgia.
Suck it, monkey!
It's actually an incredible looking instance. I mean, they must have gone to a lot of effort, especially just for an April Fool's joke.
Yeah, I feel like they started doing a little bit and said, hang on, this is actually really cool, and then just expanded it out. And there's even a decent boss fight that needs proper strategy, a river raft ride.
Classic dive roll. Good.
And weapons to purchase.
150 baubles.
And even a Street Fighter-inspired bonus stage where you bash up a cart. It really is beautiful work from this beautiful game.
Right, well, time to open up some emails at the Ask Good Game desk.
Yes.
Good game.
Okay, question time, and today we've got this one from Todd Face in Lansdowne, New South Wales.
With gaming being a big dollars business, why are there so many developers going bust? With the price of new games $80 to $100 each, who is making all the money? Well, Todd Face, it's an interesting question without an easy answer, but I think what it comes down to is the simple fact that it costs a lot of money to make and sell a game, and a lot of games just don't sell enough to keep the developers in business.
Yeah, but to give you a rough idea of where your money goes when you buy a game from a shop, it gets split up a little bit like this. The biggest chunk of the money usually goes to the publisher, about 30%. Approximately 20% goes to the shop itself, another 20% goes to paying the console manufacturer, about 15% is spent to recoup the cost of marketing the game, leaving the actual developers with just 15%.
Of course, that's just a rough model based on a big AAA game. I'd imagine something like Minecraft on PC, which was developed independently and sold completely digitally, ends up with a far higher percentage being returned to the developer.
And I've heard the average cost of developing a modern AAA multi-platform game is around $25 million, with your really big games like your Call of Duties and Halos costing around $50 million. So for those games to even start making a profit, they need to sell about 1 million copies, which those big brands do easily, but for other smaller franchises, it can be a tall order to sell even 500,000.
Yeah, so I think it's a risky business making a big game, and sadly we've seen so many developers being shut down as publishers try to knuckle down and focus on marketing just a few core franchises they know will sell well, and cutting back on anything that isn't guaranteed to make a solid return, and sadly that includes new intellectual properties or new games.
All right, well, I think it's time we move on to the wealth of public opinion that is You Review. And how about we see what the intellectual masses thought of the arty bientôt l'été?
It seems like the masses agreed with our verdict. Scratch here seems shocked at its very existence, saying, someone put time and effort into making this? Half a star.
Lego Halo 2984 seemed bewildered by the deep themes and artistic intentions, asking, what? 1 star.
Dressuka here has a more balanced appreciation of the art, saying, as art, it's amazing. As a game, waste of time. Half star.
Meanwhile, Goodfella gave the second highest score among you and had this to say: this game is like a bulldog wrestling a tiger while chewing on a wasp. It does not make sense. 2 stars.
But bucking the trend and clearly disagreeing with us and everyone else was Art, who says simply, too deep for you, 10 out of 10. Reviews don't get much deeper than that, but on that critical bombshell, it's time to get back to the studio, Hex.
Yes, it is. Voila. Like a scarf.
Good game.
Star Trek is a cooperative shooter where you can play in either online or split screen as either Kirk or Spock, and it's set between the 2 recent films.
Yeah, and there's some solid sci-fi ideas in here too, and sometimes that's all I need, especially if I'm already a fan. That's enough to get through it. And the cast from the films lend their voices to this game too. Plus, just like in the films, Chris and Zachary sound so much like Shatner and Nimoy, it just makes my heart skip a beat.
I like this one. There are a few that you do not like, Captain.
Unfortunately, as you progress, all the game's issues just become unforgivably frustrating.
What the hell was that?
Problem number 1, tedious hacking minigames at every turn. If you're playing on your own with an AI, you can sometimes order him to hack things for you for most of them, which is a welcome relief.
Spock, hack that keypad.
But there are still mandatory co-op ones. Playing with the AI also has its downsides, though.
Yes, it's a comedy of AI errors. The glitches do help to keep things a bit entertaining, except when your AI partner is stuck somewhere and you can't progress, forcing you to restart the checkpoint. Playing with the AI does have one other advantage though.
Over here!
You can order him to a location, which can help you work out how to actually get there. Even in the early missions, I struggled to know where to go, and I'm checking my tricorder every few seconds just to find the marker, and it shouldn't be like that. It's a classic case of poor level design.
It's infuriating, and it only gets worse. Here you're just faced with samey looking backgrounds and zones that just confuse you.
Yeah, it doesn't help that you're not having much fun either, so you just want to get there as soon as possible. And plus, in co-op, it's very difficult trying to work out where to go.
It's such a shame, Barjo, because the cast do such a great job and the story is solid. It's also full of what should be exciting action sequences, such as where you go outside the ship here and use person-to-person teleporters to solve puzzles. Cool idea, but then it took us 5 or so minutes to figure out how these things actually worked, and then when they do work, they're fiddly and they only work on certain platforms. You die too often from things that don't feel like your fault, because you just can't quite make Spock and Kirk do what you want them to do.
For survival would be to attempt an escape from this vessel.
That's not gonna happen.
And this leaves the player feeling cheated and frustrated, like so.
Just like in this medical bay section.
Ah, my leg!
Here, you're meant to go to the medical bay to repair your broken leg or something, and Spock is actually stuck to you for the whole section. But if you get too close to a wall, you get stuck and you feel like you're in this endless three-point turn minigame.
Sadly, the combat doesn't save it either. There are a few perks and slick-looking sci-fi weapons, but enemy AI is pretty woeful. You know what, I think they deserve props for trying to make something more than just a bog-standard corridor shooter, but the basics need to come first, otherwise you're going to end up feeling like you're playing an old game or that you've got some kind of handicap the whole time. It's an opportunity missed, and you get the sense that it could have been so much better with some polish instead of length. What I think is really upsetting is that this is such a rich and exciting universe with a large and growing fan base that it deserves to be explored. This game sadly didn't do it though, and I gave it 3.5.
I gave it 3 out of 10.
Good game.
And that's your morsel of gaming for this week. But you can always catch Good Game Tuesday nights, 8:30 p.m. on ABC2. And this week we're going to have a look at Mortal Kombat.
Fight.
And also Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon.
If guns make me safe, bigger guns make me safer.
Aw, 80s vibes to the max. It's like the Vice City of open world shooters.
Yeah, I can't unsee all of that neon.
Till next time, may all your games be good ones. Hex out.
Barjo also out.
I did it too. Did this.
Yeah, delayed though. You've got to be in sync. Ready? Ready?
I knew you were not going to do it. What a troll.